tatvataha so avikalpena yogena yuchyate natra samshayaha. One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this, there is no doubt. So this is a continuation of the point that Krishna is trying to make in the previous set of verses, that he is the source of everything. So in the previous verse, he says that he is the source of all the Prajapatis. So he talked about the 7 great sages, the 4 sages before that. So the Saptarishis, then the 14 Manus, the 4 Kumaras. So they are the great Prajapatis. He is the source of all of them. And in the verse before that, he talks about the fact that he is the source of all qualities: intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness. So the point that he's trying to impress on Arjun is that everything comes from him. And Arjun may ask him that what's the point in you emphasizing on this, Krishna? So here Krishna is giving, why is he? So sometimes people say that if the quality of humility is personified by Krishna, we don't see that very much in the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna repeatedly glorifies himself. I am the greatest of the greatest. Everything comes from me. I am the purest. Surrender unto me. So one may ask that why is Krishna boasting? Why is he talking so much about himself, glorifying himself? And Krishna is giving the reason over here that the only reason. So firstly, he is not boasting. Boasting means that you speak about some qualities that may be present in a small extent in you, but you exaggerate them. Like as children sometimes, we boast saying that I am the strongest and I am the richest or something like that. So whatever Krishna is saying is factual. So there is no boasting there. And the reason that he is doing it is explained in these set of verses. So he says, one who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Mam yuveti tatvata. So the first time that Krishna spoke about himself in the 4th chapter, so he repeats almost this line identical. He said, Janam karam cha me divyam yo me vedi tatvata taktadayam punarjanmam neti mam eti so Arjuna. That one who understands Janam karma cha me divyam, that one who understands that my appearance and my activities are divyam, are divine. Yo me vedi tatvata. That one who understands the tattva. Veti means to know, and tattva is an axiomatic truth that stands on itself. Yome veti tatvata takta deham punarjanmam. That does not, when he gives up his body, takta deham punarjanmam. No birth. Veti maham eti so Arjuna. So what happens to him? Veti maham eti so Arjuna. He comes to me. Right? So that's why Krishna is talking about himself. The Prabhupada in the purport writes that it's not sufficient to know that God is great. What we need to know is how great is God. So one's conviction increases with details. So if you say God is great, the other person will say yes, God is great, and conceptually they will accept that. So unless a person is a strong atheist, everybody accepts that. And really speaking, there are very few atheists. It's said that it takes a lot of faith to be an atheist. So there are very few. Most of the people who call themselves atheists, they're actually agnostics. So they don't know, and they'll be honest about it. They'll say we don't know enough, so we don't form an opinion on that. But to be a true atheist, one has to have a lot of faith in the, because there is a by default there is a lot of there is a lot of evidence of the presence of God. Right? Our very existence is an evidence. Science does not answer the question about consciousness. They can answer the question about life or death, but when does consciousness occur? And consciousness is something that is even there in like a small bacteria or virus. Even they are conscious. They have low level of consciousness, but even they have this ability to identify food and go for food, or they can sense an enemy and go away from it. If you take a plant and expose it to sunlight, then you will see that over time the plant will tilt towards the sunlight. Right? So they have their consciousness. They see that there is sun, and then they move towards the sun. So what is it that creates that consciousness? What happens when a person is no longer living? Right? Between birth and between living and non-living, there is very little change. Right now, because people are more morally accountable, they don't do those kinds of experiments. But back in the time of World War I and II, there were many scientists who were very curious to find out that what happens at the time of death. So there's one particular scientist, and I forget his name. So what he would do is that at the moment of death, whenever he knew that the death was imminent, he would weigh the person. Right? And when the person died, he would see the change in the weight. And then he saw that the weight changed by always a fixed amount at the time of death. So regardless whether the person was 100 pounds or 200 pounds, again, my memory is not that good, so I forget that amount, but there was a fixed amount. So,
You can
so
Google it. You can Google it.
we can Google it, yeah. Google's memory is better. Too much dependence on Google, right? It destroys your own memory. So based on that, he declared that the weight of the soul is whatever, so many grams it came out to be. For a long time, that was accepted as the weight of the soul. And then later on, other scientists, they said that it's actually because at the time of death, the body releases a lot of chemical gases mostly, which have a fixed kind of a weight. So it's not the weight of not the weight of the soul. But there's always been curiosity about when does consciousness enter, when does consciousness leave, and great scientists like Newton and Einstein and Oppenheimer, they were all subscribing to the notion of the presence of a superior force. Einstein made this famous statement that the more we know, the more we understand how little we know. So as this explored more and more science, because ultimately what the scientists do is they discover, right? They don't invent anything. Newton did not invent the laws of motion or the laws of gravitation. Somebody else put it in place, but he was brilliant, intelligent enough to understand and document it. That this is how the first law of motion works, this is how the law of gravitation works, this is how the atoms are working, the whole quantum physics and all that. It's fascinating. And Prabhupada would say that wherever there is laws, there has to be a lawgiver. There are so many laws, laws of motion, laws of gravity, laws of electricity, but nobody wonders that with so many laws, where's the lawgiver? That by nature, the universe tends to entropy, which means the natural state of being is disorder, chaos. If you, like they give the example that if you take a bunch of bricks and mortar and wood and you throw it in the air, it's not going to become a house, regardless of how many times you throw it. It's not going to become a house. So somebody has to organize it in that way. So, so Krishna in these verses, he is bringing our attention to what makes Krishna Krishna, to what makes Krishna God. And he says one who is factually convinced. So he's making this point that not superstitiously convinced, not emotionally convinced, but factually convinced. So this is a very interesting interplay between logic and faith. Sometimes people say that faith begins where logic ends, right? And to some extent, Krishna is negating that notion. That natural extension of logic is faith. That when you understand logically that where there is law, there is a lawgiver, when you understand that the nature of things is not to organize themselves, but somebody is organizing them. That when there is creation, there is a creator, right? So this is logic, and you extrapolate logic and say, thus I can understand that somebody is taking care of it. Then he says that Sa Vikalpena Yogena. So Prabhupada translates Yogena as he translates Yogena as devotional service. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes that he explains why is he translating Yogena as devotional service. Because what's the literal meaning of yoga? Like in Sanskrit? To connect, right? So yoga means to connect. The English word yoke is actually a derivative of yoga. So yoke means to bring together. It's used more in the conjunction of like when you're yoking cattle. So you have two bulls and you yoke them. So they are, by the yoke, they are brought together. And even if you use yoke in our, yoking people together or thoughts, is bringing them together. So yoga is to connect. And in this context, that yogena is to connect with Krishna. So what happens to one who understands the greatness of Krishna? Then he renders devotional service unto Krishna. Because then there is no other alternative. The two of them are almost, it's said that when there is lightning, then there will be there will be sound and there will be brightness. They inevitably follow. So even in our lives, we can see reflections of that. That if you meet somebody and then we like the qualities of the person, then we will develop affection for that person. It will always be there. Right? If you like a person, you like the qualities of the person, you will always develop affection for the person. It follows naturally. So that's why Krishna is saying that Prabhupada is saying that when one understands the qualities of Krishna, the greatness of Krishna, one will automatically render devotional service to him. And that's the reason these three chapters are there, 10, 11 and 12, because in these three chapters, Krishna reveals more and more and more about himself. After the 12th chapter, he stops. He's at this point that, Are Baba, even now you're not convinced, so now you read the 13th chapter. So what is the 13th chapter? The three modes of material nature. So he says, now you have to see, why is it that you cannot understand me? So 10th, 11th, 12th, Krishna is speaking more and more about himself. And this he talks about his opulence. There he talks, in 11th he talks about his universal form. 12th he talks about his personal form. Prabhupada says, after 12th chapter, Bhagavad Gita is finished. But then even some people read 12th chapter, after the 12th chapter, they say, I don't know, not sure about it. So Krishna says, I know what the problem is. That you are, and true for all of us, that you are too much under the influence of the modes of material nature. So let me tell you more about the modes of material nature. So then 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, all about the modes of material nature. So it's kind of like this, that you have a very attractive person in the room. Sometimes, generally, it's used in the context of a young man and a woman. That there is a young man who has blindfold on his eye, and there's a very beautiful woman in the room. He doesn't care because he cannot see her. So he's just doing whatever it is. When the blindfold is removed, then he says, oh my God, there's such a beautiful woman in my room. And he says, Hare Krishna Mataji. He won't say Mataji much or something. Like he'll say, Hare Krishna, whatever. And, how are you? Because why? Because he has seen the woman now, right? He has seen the beauty of the woman. All that was needed to be done was the blindfold to be removed. So, by the end of 12th chapter, if you're not able to appreciate the greatness of Krishna, that means some kind of illusion is impinging our ability to see. So the last 6 chapters are about understanding the nature of that illusion. Like if you're tied and if you understand how the knot is tied, you can untie it. Right? Otherwise, if you just keep pushing against it, the knots will become tighter and tighter. Right? So, like so at least in our family tradition, after marriage we have this thing, right? That there's a rope with many knots in it, and then at one end the husband starts untying, at the other end the wife, the new bride, she starts untying, and whoever unties more is the winner. Right, so and Indulekha was very good at untying. So me, I was just trying to, I was just using brute force. But the way they tie these knots, and they're tied by women also, so it's not fair. But you as you try to open it, it gets tighter and tighter. But you have to figure out there's one thread, you pull it out, and the knot is open. And there's another one that you pull out, and I just untied one knot, and then she was all over the. But the understanding is that if you know the way it's tied, then you can untie it in a easy way. So that's what the subsequent 6 chapters. 18th chapter is a summary, but at least the first maybe the first 45 verses, they're still about the modes of material nature. After that, Krishna starts summarizing the Bhagavad Gita, so 18th chapter is 78 verses. So maybe the last 35 verses, he starts summarizing what he has spoken so far. So the next set of 4 verses are perhaps the most important verses in the Bhagavad Gita. So they are known as the Chatushloki. So the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is encapsulated in these 4 verses. But I'll stop before I read them to see if there's any questions or discussions.
One question. You mentioned that natural state of being is a disorder.
Not being, natural state or matter.
Matter. Okay.
So it's not a spiritual fact. It's the law of entropy.
Okay.
Law of entropy is right, that anything left by itself will go from a state of less chaos to greater chaos. That's the law of entropy.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, I think I mixed it with it sounded like it was Krishna saying some law or whatever it is, but that is one of the conundrums for the scientist, that the nature of matter is chaos, right? But then how does order come out of chaos?
Okay.
Now that's one of the questions that they cannot answer conclusively.
Oh, so that is to say the maker behind it.
The nature of matter is basically like you make something and then you leave it on its own. Over time, it will degrade. It won't get better.
Yes.
It will degrade, right?
Yes.
Person dies, the body starts rotting.
Yes.
Right? You even if you make something inanimate, right? You make something, you leave it out. After some time, it will rust, or if it is wood, it will start dissolving. It will never grow better.
Yes. No.
Right.
No.
Right? You can't. You take a piece of wood and you put it outside. You won't get like a sculptured piece. So that's the natural state of things, that they always go from order to chaos, and from chaos to even greater chaos.
So you are making the point that the Krishna behind it to have that
To
order.
reverse that, right?
Reverse.
Right. Because in the universe we see so much order.
Yes.
Right? The solar system, the galaxies, they're all in so much of perfect balance. That the distance between the planets, the way that they rotate, everything is in perfect balance.
Yes.
If you look at I'm sure you've studied in school the ecosystem of the earth, and how everything is so perfectly balanced between water and air and so many other things. And we were just doing it very superficially.
Yes.
But the deeper you go, you understand that how things are, the fact that we breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, and the plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, right? If the plants were not there, then what would happen? The whole atmosphere would eventually become depleted of oxygen,
Yes.
right? Everything, there is so much of deliberation
Right.
that is done there.
Yes.
And then saying that it has happened by accident is like that example. It's like, throwing a bunch of brick and wood and mortar in the air and saying that,
Expecting a house.
there's a house that comes. Now, you can throw it n number of times, you'll never get a house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, I mean, very, may not be related to this particular verse, but the verse before. So, what is the position of the Chatuskumar? We know Brahma, every 100 years, his life finishes and new Brahma comes out. But Chatuskumar, they being the devotees of the Supreme Lord, and now coming into the cosmic manifestation, in the sense the material world. I don't know whether they are in material world, because they also belongs to a son of Brahma, so that means they are probably in Brahma Loka. So can you elaborate a little bit about their position? Who are they, and because there are stories also, not stories, I mean past time also, when they wanted to go and meet Lord Vishnu, and then Jaya Vijay get cursed out of that. That means, are they in Vaikuntha, are they in Brahma Loka? Just a little bit, if you can explain on their positions.
Sure. So in the Bhagavatam, first canto, 6th chapter, Srila Prabhupada explains this in the purport. He's talking about Narad Muni, but they are in the same category, because Narad Muni also appears from the body of Brahma. He appears from the introspection of Brahma. And the 4 Kumars also appear from the thoughts of Brahma. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes that these, so they are jivas. He says these jivas are associates of Krishna who come through the agency of Brahma. They are not dependent on Brahma, but they come through Brahma. So just like there is a door in a house, and a person enters the house through the door, it's not to minimize the position of Brahma, but the person was existing either way, this side of the door and that side of the door. So he talks about the point like Narad is an eternal associate. Right? When the universe is created, then he comes through the body of Brahma to continue his his activity. When the universe is destroyed, then he exits through the body of Brahma and he continues with this activity. And then Prabhupada says that also other, and then he talks about the four Kumaras, talks about the Sapta Rishis, and he says you should understand that these are also similar jivas, that they are exalted souls who, because of their devotional service, have been given service to perform on the behalf of Krishna, and when the universe is created, then they enter through the body of Brahma to execute that service. So we'll do the Chaturshloki. So one way to remember the verses in Bhagavad Gita that are Chaturshloki is, like, we always consider this number to be auspicious, 108, right? So we write donations, $108, or when we Lord,
Beats are 108.
we chant 108 beats, and then spiritual masters, leaders, they also say that, Om, Om, 108, whatever, or sometimes they say 1008. So because 108 is an auspicious number. So the Chaturshloki is chapter 10, verse 8. After that, 4 verses, 8, 9, 10, 11. These 4 verses you should memorize. If there are only 4 verses in Bhagavad Gita you want to memorize these 4 verses with the translation. And of course, purport you should definitely read. But the Bhagavad Gita as a book is about Sambandh Gyan. It talks about the relationship between the Jiva, us, and Krishna. These 3 verses, they summarily describe Sambandh Gyan. And we'll see how it is describing the relationship between the Jiva and Krishna as described by Krishna. That's why they are very special. So 10.8, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvataha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise, who perfectly know this, engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So, Prabhupada has so this verse is to some extent a paraphrasing of the previous verse, right? Very similar verbiage. One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic powers of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. The only difference is that in the previous verse, Krishna had said this mystic power, right? And we could understand that he was referring to the mystic powers he had described in the prior verses, but also he is describing the mystic powers that he is going to describe. So in this he Arjuna says, this mystic powers, what mystic powers? And Krishna says, these mystic powers, that I am the source of all spiritual and material world. Everything emanates from me. Right? Not a small mystic power, big mystic power. Right? This is a widely sweeping mystic power. That the whole creation is divided into material and spiritual. So when he says the material and spiritual emanate from me, which means that everything emanates from me. So I'll go through the purport just because Prabhupada in the purport has expanded upon. So Krishna again, the mood behind which he is saying this is to convince us about his divinity, is to convince us about his unique position. That there is only one person who is the source of all creations. Everybody else has a creator. We have a creator, our parents have the creators. We keep going back. There is Brahma. The Prajapati is then Brahma. Either Brahma as a creator, Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Garbhodaksha Vishnu as a creator, Karnodaksha Vishnu. Karnodaksha Vishnu as a creator, Lord Balaram. Lord Balaram as a creator, Krishna. But when we come to Krishna, then as they say, the buck stops over there. So Krishna is making this point that everything, whether it is material or spiritual, comes from him. So what Prabhupada does in the purport is that he quotes from some other scriptures to substantiate the point. So he says that all Vedic literatures agree that Krishna is the source of Brahma, Shiva and all other demigods. In the Atharva Veda, Gopal Tapani Upanishad, it is said, so I'll skip the Sanskrit, it was Krishna who in the beginning instructed Brahma in Vedic knowledge and who disseminated Vedic knowledge in the past. So Prabhupada is saying Krishna is the source of all knowledge. The Vedas comes from Brahma, but where does Brahma learn the Vedas from? Learns it from Krishna. And in the 15th chapter, Krishna will actually make this point. Sarvasya hidi sanivishto mata jnanam apohanam cha vedesya cha sarveraham eva vedyo vedantakrit eva eva. That I am the compiler of the Vedas, and I am to be known by the Vedas. So then Prabhupada quotes the Narayana Upanishad, and he says, then the Supreme Personality Narayan desired to create living entities. So knowledge comes from Krishna. Us, the living entities, they come from Krishna. So Narayan is an expansion of Krishna. So when he desired to create the living entities, then the living entities appeared. So knowledge comes from Krishna, the living entities come from Krishna. Then from Narayan, Brahma is born. And from Narayan, the patriarchs are also born. From Narayan, Indra is born. From Narayan, the 8 Vasus are born. From Narayan, the 11 Rudras are born. From Narayan, the 12 Adityas are born. So this is again quoted from Gopal Tapani Upanishad, that Narayan is an expansion of Krishna, and all the devas that are administering the universe, they also trace their origin back to Narayan and to Krishna. Brahma, as we said, Brahma is born from the navel of Garbhodaksha, Vishnu. Then the Vasus, the Rudras, now they are not directly born from Lord Narayan. So we know that the Adityas are born from Kashyap and Aditi. But then Kashyap comes from Marichi, and Marichi comes from Brahma, and Brahma comes from Narayan. Rudra is born from Lord Brahma, right? And then Brahma comes. So through transitivity, we can understand that. That's why Prabhupada is making the point that everybody is coming from Krishna. So everybody that we consider great and worshipable, and rightly so, because these are great personalities. Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, they're great. They're such great personalities that the predominant portion of the Vedas are venerations, they're prayers. Like the Rig Veda, that is mostly prayers to Agni Dev, and the Sam Veda, prayers to Vayu Dev, Agni Dev, Indra. Right? So Krishna is not very much there in the Vedas. They are there too. They are mostly there for. That's why these Prabhupada is specifically quoting these verses. That one who is reading the scriptures might ask this question. And most of the scriptures are talking about Lord Shiva, Rudra. They're talking about the Adityas, the Vasus. the Rudras, right? And the Gopal Tapani Upanishad says that all these great personalities come from Lord Narayan. And Lord Narayan is an expansion of Krishna. Then Prabhupada says that this, so he's saying in the same Veda, which is continuing the Gopal Tapani, the son of Devaki Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No, this is in the Narayana Upanishad. In the beginning of the creation, there was only the Supreme Personality, Narayan. There was no Brahma, no Shiva, no fire, no moon, no stars in the sky, no sun. And this is actually explained in greater details in the Bhagavatam. That when the universe is first created, there's nothing over there. There is only Lord Vishnu. And then through Lord Vishnu, the elements, the gross elements, the subtle elements are created. Through the body of Lord Vishnu, the jivas then enter. And then the universe begins to act and react. But in the beginning, there is only Lord Vishnu, nobody else. Right? So he is independent, but others are dependent on him. In the Maha Upanishad, it is said that Lord Shiva was born from the forehead of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the Vedas say that it is the Supreme Lord, the creator of Brahma and Shiva, who is to be worshipped. Right? Sometimes people say, Hindus also will say that, but generally when they try and if you see the typical description of Hindu religion, they say that Hindu religion believe in the Holy Trinity, the three gods, Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh. And they put them on the same level. That Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the maintainer, Lord Shiva is the destroyer. Right? But factually it is not correct. That all three personalities are at completely different levels. Brahma is like you and I, Jiva, 50 qualities, 50 gunas. Right? So anybody in this room who wants to become a Brahma can become a Brahma. If they have the qualification, they can become Brahma. Right? But we cannot become Shiva. And we can definitely not become Krishna. So Lord Shiva is much more exalted than Lord Brahma. And Lord Krishna is even more exalted. In the Brahma Samhita it is like Kshiram yatha dadi vikara vishesha yoga sanjate nahi tata samupayati kevya. That in order to describe the relationship between Krishna and Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, so this is Brahma's prayers at the beginning of the universe, Kshiram yatha dadi vikara vishesha yoga. That by the action of acids, Kshiram, milk becomes dadi. That milk becomes yogurt. So by the influence of the modes of material nature, Krishna expands into Lord Shiva. So you can always get yogurt from milk, but you can never get milk from yogurt. So the process does not work the other way around. So when Krishna desires to consort with the material energy, so material energy is Durga Devi. So when Krishna desires to consort with the material energy, then he expands as Lord Shiva. And as Lord Shiva, he is associating with the material energy. But never as Krishna. Krishna is completely transcendental. He is completely unaffected by the material energy. Right? So Shiva is Lord Shiva is Shiva Tattva. He is not Jiva. So he is not like us, he is Shiva Tattva, but Brahma is Jiva Tattva. I mean, this is not to minimize the position of Brahma. We should not think that, hey Brahma, I am Jiva, you are Jiva, so we are the same. He's obviously a very exalted soul, very exalted devotee there, but he's Jiva. He's a Jiva Tattva. So that's why when these people make the statements, it just reflects the lack of the understanding of the nuances of the Vedic philosophy. That they look at it symptomatically, but they don't analyze it from a more causal perspective. The statement that they make is not incorrect. Brahma does do the creation, but he does visarga. He does the secondary creation. Right? Lord Shiva does do the destruction, and Lord Vishnu does do maintenance. Right? But Lord Brahma is born from Lord Vishnu. And Lord Shiva, and Shiva Tattva is complicated, but the Rudras who do the destruction are actually born from Brahma. So, different category. In the Moksha Dharma, Krishna says, the patriarchs Shiva and others are created by me, though they do not know that they are created by me because they are deluded by my illusory energy. And we can relate to that, because earlier on it was said that the jivas are created by Krishna. So, but still we do not know that. We may read that, but we don't appreciate that, in the sense that it does not sink into our realization. So we may file it away as knowledge, but it does not really become our mind frame that yes, Krishna created us. So similarly, same exalted living entities, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. Lord Brahma has perfect knowledge of the Vedas, but he is still under the control of the material energy. So that is why he has still got that illusion about who created him. Otherwise he wouldn't have stolen the cowherd boys, right? He wouldn't have stolen the calves in Brahma Vimohan Leela. So he still has, so the nature of jiva is kshara. Kshara means that you can be overcome at any point of time. And great personalities like Lord Brahma can be overcome. In the Mohini Murti pastime, we see that Lord Shiva is overcome. So great personalities can be overcome. So we can also be overcome. So Prabhupada said that's why we have to strongly hold on to the lotus feet of our spiritual master and Krishna. So towards the ending of the purport, Prabhupada says, because everything is born of me, I am the original source of all. Everything is under me, and no one is above me. So Prabhupada, capturing the mood of Krishna, is mercifully trying to convince us over and above. He's saying, okay, if this verse doesn't convince you, let me quote to you some other scriptures that essentially expand on this verse. So same point that is being made. Krishna is the source of everything. But the idea is that the most effective form of emphasis is repetition. So through repetition, the point is being emphasized. Okay, questions, comments?
I understand the meaning of 108, but they also write like checks, to people on 101, 201,
Yeah.
301. I said, where does that come from?
So this is more Hindu tradition than Vedic tradition. That zero is considered zero is shunya. So if you get 100, then you're ending with 0, which means this is it, bas. No more money from me. So 101 means that this is a continuing form of charity from. So that's why people, when they write, they put in, instead of 0, they'll put in a 1. Or if they're giving somebody in charity, the idea is that you will be able to give in charity if you can afford to give in charity. So everybody wants to be in that position, that may I continuously give in charity. And the implicit statement over there, of course, is that may I always be in a position to give in charity. So when they're giving in charity, then instead of 100, they say 101, saying this is not the end of it. That there is a lot more coming. So that's why you say 51, 101, or 151, those numbers there. My understanding is not really Vedic, it's just like, it's more of a Hindu
And
tradition kind of thing. Generally what they'll do is that, at least now, when you get the envelopes, there's a 1 rupee, like, because there's no, you don't get 1 rupee, so there's already a 1 rupee on the envelope, and the person will take the money out and use the envelope to give it to somebody else. So 1 rupee keeps going away.
Yeah, right.
Brahma is Jiva and having 54 qualities, so in one being can also elevate themselves to that, what it can be Siva. Because Siva is the higher platform. And, but Siva came, since it came from Brahmaji, so just thinking how it is possible. Brahmaji, he has not capability that much. Like Brahma came from Krishna, so definitely most of the quality he got. But how it is possible with 54 quality he can give more?
Thank you, it's a good question. I'll answer briefly, but this is like a whole discussion in itself. So, the personality that takes birth from Brahma, the 11 Rudras, they are expansions of Shiva. Right, so the Shiva that we say has 55 qualities is Sadashiv. He lives in Shivlok. Shivlok is not in the material world. It's not in the spiritual world. It's not Vaikuntha, but it's not in the material world. Right, so he has his own thing going on, which is a little complicated to understand, but he does not get destroyed when Brahma dies. Rudras get destroyed. Right, so the Rudras are expansions of Sadashiv. Right, and one of the Rudras, the primary Rudras, is Shankar. So the primary Rudras that is commonly worshipped is Lord Shankar, who we see sitting in Himalayas with the moon and the Ganges. Right, so he is the primary Rudra that appears. Sadashiv, not many people worship because he's hidden, but he accepts his worship through the Rudras also. So both of it is going on. So the 11 Rudras are Jivas. They are empowered by Lord Shiva.
Rudras are empowered by Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva. So they're expansions of Lord Shiva.
But I think the question is, how can Brahma create
Lord
Shiva, who is more superior than him? I think that's her
He
question.
didn't create, right? That's not how
So he doesn't. So think of it this way that So let's assume I am Shiva, right? And Sachi Prabhu is Brahma. So when Brahma is creating the universe, so then so there's some circumstances after which he creates Rudras. So then I say you 11 people, I am empowering you. You go and help Sachi Prabhu. Right. So they are not me. They are empowered by me. So they are jivas. They are empowered by me. But they're still considered, because they are fully empowered by me, they're still considered non-different from me. So when the Rudras are born, then they try to kill Brahma. And Brahma says, Baba, why are you killing me? I just created you. And the Rudra says, that's our nature. We are strong, we are powerful. So then Brahma says, okay, you perform austerities, and when the time is right, then I will take your help at the time.
I heard that anger, I think when the four Kumaras,
Yes.
Brahma wanted them to be his.
Prajapatis.
Yeah, but then they were not interested. So
Right,
then he
right.
gets angry, and from that anger is when
The Rudras are born. And that's how they get the name Rudra. So Rudra means to
Anger,
cry.
yeah.
It doesn't mean to,
They would cry,
not
actually, yeah.
Rudra means
Yeah,
to cry.
so yeah, Rudra
So when they appeared, they started crying that, who are we? What is the place for us? So Brahma gives them their names, gives them the place, marries them, gives them 11 Rudranis, right? So he says, because you appeared crying, you will be known as Rudras from now onwards. But again, I may not be able to do full justice to the subject because they say that two tattvas are very difficult to understand. The Guru Tattva and the Shiva Tattva. So the scriptures don't, the scriptures speak about it indirectly, more in terms of effect. But so like the Jiva Tattva is simple to understand. The Vishnu Tattva, Krishna is simple to understand. Krishna is God. He's the big boss. So that's very simple to understand. But Guru Tattva is difficult to understand because the scriptures, they say that even though the Guru is Jiva, but he is like God. In some of the scriptures they say that he's greater than God. So what's the relationship between a disciple and a Guru? So similarly the Shiva Tattva is also difficult to understand. Okay.
I have a question. We just went through this purport which said from Narayana Brahma is born, and from Narayana Indra is born, Narayana is born, and also we ended it from Narayana 11 Rudras are born. But we just were discussing on from Brahma Rudras are born. I'm not clear.
Right. So what this verse is doing is kind of compressing the chain. That from Narayana Brahma is born, and from Brahma Rudras are born. So ultimately, just by the law of transitivity, you can say, so like the Rudras are born from Brahma, the Adityas are born from Kashyap, Kashyap is born from Marichi, Marichi is born from Brahma, Brahma comes from Narayana. But still they're making this point, they're from Narayana, the 12 Adityas come. Because he is the cause of the cause. That way.
So it's always routing it to the.
It's always going either one hop or two hop or, in our case maybe 20 million hops, but ultimately it goes to Krishna. Yeah.
So the Lord Shiva is Mount Kailash. So he is a Jiva Tattva and he is inferior to Brahma.
He is so he is considered to be Shiva Tattva, right? So he is a Jiva that has been empowered by Lord Shiva, right? But again, I'm not an expert in that, so that's why I didn't want. Mataji asked the question, so I tried to explain it. But there's a big asterisk there which says that, which has a disclaimer in it, saying this is to the best of my knowledge. There. But at least the way I understand it is that they're since they're expansions of Lord Shiva, they are considered as Shiva Tattva. Right? But Lord Shiva never takes birth. But these, the Rudras take birth and they die. So they have a slightly different pastime compared to Lord Shiva.
Prabhu, you said Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the operator, and Shiva is the destroyer. So it means our life is like that too, like when we are born, there is hand of Vishnu, Brahma, and then through the whole lifetime we are under Vishnu, and then at the end we are. Is that the way?
I think for us it's a little different, Prabhu, because so what's happening to us in the material world is that we're always being destroyed. So the jiva goes through when the jiva is conditioned and comes to the material world, they go through something called. So there's one notion that at least as Hindus we know, which is called pralaya. So pralaya is destruction,
Destroy.
right? And there are different kinds of pralayas. You know, there is what is partial destruction, there is complete destruction, and then there is something called nitya pralaya, which is continuous destruction. So we are basically subject to nitya pralaya. That from the time we are born, we begin to die. Right? So the only thing that is really permanent is our death. So even when we die, when we take birth again, then that destruction is still going on. So within the material world, I'm trying to relate what you're saying. The jiva is never created. The jiva is never destroyed. But our body is continuously going through destruction. From the perspective of the material world as a whole, what you're saying is absolutely right. That when the material universe is created, Lord Brahma is doing it. When it is getting destroyed, Lord Shiva is doing it. And between the two, Lord Vishnu is operating it. Yeah.
Same lines when Lord Krishna says, I am the time. Doesn't Lord Krishna also says that as everything emanates from me, also the same, also the death also emanates from me?
Yes,
There
yes.
is no Shiva Tattva here. Because
There is. It's the same question that Hari is asking. That when Krishna says, I am time, so think of it this way, that the president of a company, he will take responsibility for all the actions in the company, right? He will say, I am doing research, I am manufacturing, I am selling, I am doing marketing. There may be different people who are heads of the manufacturing division, research division, etc. Right? But everything, like when Steve Jobs was there, he created the Apple, the iPhone, he sold it, everything Steve Jobs is doing. But he had a huge organization under him. He had people who were doing different things. So when Steve Jobs said that I created the iPhone, it's correct. Because whoever created the iPhone was actually, he was working under the guidance of this person. So when Krishna says that time I am, which means that I am destruction, then he's assuming the responsibilities of Lord Shiva. Right? And when he says that I create everything, he's assuming the responsibilities of Lord Brahma. And when he says that everything is maintained by me, he's assuming the responsibilities of Lord Vishnu. Right? Okay. So we'll do the next verse. Machit matkat prana bodhayantas parasparam katayantas shamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they desire and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So we had said earlier on that Bhagavad Gita was Sambandha Gyan. So in Sambandha Gyan, there are 3 tattvas. And the tattvas, they fully describe a relationship. So if we have to describe a relationship completely, what are the 3 aspects or the 3 qualities that we need to define? What do you think? That if you have to describe a relationship completely, comprehensively, what are the 3 things that need to be defined?
Who am I? Who is the other person? And what is there in between?
What is the relationship? Right. So these are the 3 things. That because a relationship is between 2 people. So first is define the 2 people, and then the nature of the relationship. So as we go through life, we have so many relationships, right? If you think about the relationships we have, they're predicated on these 3 things. the same person, he or she could be a son and a daughter, a husband or a wife, father, mother, friend, could be enemy, well-wisher, so many relationships, right? And they're all based on these three things: me, the other person, and the nature of the relationship. So in the previous verse, Krishna had said, "Who am I?" He describes himself. Aham sarvasya prabhu matata sarvam pravartate. That everything comes from me. Now he is describing us, because the sambandh gyan that we are understanding over here is between Krishna and the jiva. So Krishna will describe himself, he will describe the jiva, and then he will describe the nature of the relationship. In this he does both. He describes both. He describes the jiva and he describes the nature of the relationship. So he says, the thought of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So a natural question, verse is one of the simpler verses in Bhagavad Gita. It does not require a lot of interpretation. But one question that will come in our mind when we read this verse is, what about us? Because we don't fall in this category, right? Our thoughts don't always dwell in Krishna. We don't derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another about Krishna. So what does it mean? That are we not jivas? Because Krishna is describing his relationship with the jivas. Even if we accept Krishna's explanation about himself, we cannot accept Krishna's explanation about the jiva. So where does that put us? Are we jiva or are we not jiva?
So, Krishna is talking about his devotees, it's not about all jivas here, isn't it? Because it's saying my devotees, my pure devotees in fact.
Mm-hmm.
So
True.
are all jivas are pure devotees?
So then jivas who are not pure devotees are not jivas?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So in the verse, I'm just trying to understand. Where Krishna says that all of them falls under the category of jiva.
Yes. So we see the same question I'm asking. That if Krishna is trying to describe his sambandh gyan with the jivas, but he's talking about somebody that we know for sure
But doesn't fall under that.
doesn't fall in this category. Yeah.
My understanding here, based on your explanation that this was talking about jiva,
Yeah.
is because we are constitutionally pure devotees.
Yeah.
Just because for a moment, if we are not, because our material whole life is like a, of course, by time we can't say, but by a moment if we forget Krishna, doesn't
Yeah.
take out our position as jiva and our constitutional relation. So.
Good. It's good. Good explanation. Something else?
I'm having a hard time trying to understand what is pure devotee.
What is pure devotee? Okay. See?
I somehow agree with Ravi. I think it's just a matter of time. We are all, we were all with Krishna at some point in time. And only because of the envy are we here, all of us. And not even people who don't belong to Krishna right now. So it's just a matter of time and a matter of lifetime. For somebody it could be next lifetime, and for somebody else it could be 500,000 more lifetimes.
Right. So yes, the analogy that can help us understand is that so a mother has a son, but the son rejects the mother. He gets upset at it. The mother doesn't, whatever reason, he thinks the mother is not doing what the mother is supposed to do, he rejects the mother. And then he leaves the house and he says, you're not my mother anymore. But does that stop him from being the son? It doesn't stop him from being the son. Right? He will always be the mother's son. Nobody else can take that position. He may reject all he wants. He may hide the fact. He may stop talking to his mother. He may stop telling other people. He may say that somebody else is my mother. Right, but nothing will change the fact that this particular person is the mother for the son. So nothing can change the fact that we have this relationship that is described over here. Nothing can change the fact. When Prabhupada was once in London and a reporter asked, Swamiji, what have you come to teach us? And then Prabhupada said, I have not come here to teach you anything. I have come here to remind you that which you have forgotten. And the point that he was making is that all this knowledge is intrinsically there in the soul. The soul is fully aware, just like the son is fully aware of the position of the mother, but because he is covered by anger or because he may be covered by some kind of illusion, he goes about rejecting his mother. But he knows that who his mother is. So the jiva knows the relationship with Krishna. Nothing can change that relationship. And when Krishna is describing Sambandha-gyan, he is describing with respect to that relationship. So the point that Ravi Prabhu and Seema were making were absolutely correct, that in the state of being illusioned or conditioned, we may consider Krishna to be differently positioned. And that could be a whole gamut. We may reject Krishna completely, we may accept him partially, we may accept him conditionally, we may accept him based on our convenience. It could be, we may accept him in a different form. It runs the whole gamut of possible scenarios. And Krishna is not worried about that. He's like, fine. This is all temporary. This is an aberration. This is something that needs to be rectified, hopefully will be rectified. But what is the nature of the relationship? What is the characteristic of the jiva? So it's very interesting that when Krishna is describing the nature of the jiva, he is describing the nature of the jiva as a devotee. Because remember, we are talking about Sambandha-gyan over here. We are talking about who Krishna is and who jiva is. So Krishna described his own nature, now he is describing who the jiva is. And this is who the jiva is. The jiva is a machit-mat-kat prana, bodhiyanta paraspara. That this is the characteristics of the jiva. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that jivere sarupo hai Krishna Nityadas. That the swarup. So roop means form, swarup is the intrinsic form. Jivere sarupo hai Krishna Nityadas. Nitya is eternal and Das is servant. Krishna Nitya Das. That's the only definition of jiva. No other definition. That's why they say jiva tattva is very, very easy to understand. There is no ambiguity about it. Who is the jiva? Jiva is one who serves Krishna. Jiva is one whose constitutional position is to eternally serve Krishna. Bas. Simple. One line definition. Comprehensive, elegant, encompassing everything that you can imagine. Like when people get caught up in varnashram or they get caught up in different cultural nuances, then they say that as a king the responsibilities are different, as a soldier the responsibilities are different, as a father is different, as a son is different, and all that is correct. But all those are artificially imposed nomenclature. That when the jiva forgets his original identity in relationship with Krishna, then it is the nature of the soul to look for an identity. So then it assumes so many identities. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is this pastime of the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Srivas Angan was doing kirtan. And when he was doing kirtan, he stopped it in the middle. And then he said, today I'm not able to feel the same ecstasy of the kirtan. Has something inauspicious happened in the house? So Srivas Thakur said, no, not really. He says, you're hiding something. Something inauspicious has happened in the house. So, and Srivas Thakur was such a surrendered devotee to Mahaprabhu. What had happened was that while the kirtan was going on, his son had died. But then he asked his wife that let's not interfere with the kirtan of Mahaprabhu. You don't cry, don't create a ruckus, just be quiet. But Mahaprabhu is Krishna, is omniscient, so he obviously sensed it. So then Shiva said, yes, my son has died. And he said, okay, you get the body of your son. So Shiva Thakur gets the body of the son, and then Mahaprabhu, he commands the soul that left the body to come back. So then the boy gets up, and Mahaprabhu says, why did you create this inauspiciousness? Why did you create despair in your parents? Why did you just leave? You're young. He was a young boy. Why did you just leave? And then the soul's the soul in the body that has come back, that begins to speak very exalted Vedic philosophy. And when he talks about that, I have lived so many lives. I have been a father and a son. I have been an animal. I have traveled in so many planetary systems. I am like a cattle who is tied through the nose by the thread of karma, and helplessly I have been pulled in and out of so many forms of bodies, and I have enjoyed and suffered. But I know that unless I surrender unto you, this cycle will keep going on and on. So the soul knows, but when it gets fully conditioned, then it tries very hard to forget. Even then it does not forget, but it tries very hard to forget. Like they say, kind of a joke, but they say that, I don't know if you have seen any of those stand-up comics. Right? The stand-up comics, they go and they make jokes, and then everybody is like laughing. And they say that the reason people laugh so hard over there is because they have paid a lot of money to laugh. Right? If you were saying it for free, then they probably would not. Same joke, if you and I said it, they would say, no, okay, get a life or something like that. But they make something very simple and everybody's laughing because we once went to this, Dhruva wanted to go, DC Improv. So there are stand-up comics over there. And I was surprised, those things are really expensive. And DC Improv is kind of so these are basically the struggling, the newbies. So they are the comedians who nobody knows them. So they're trying to go. But even there, to get in, it was like $50 per head. And I could relate to it. I'd given $50, so I was laughing at all his jokes. Over there.
Nowadays, you can see all the jokes on app, WhatsApp.
Yeah, WhatsApp is a big source. So Prabhupada in the purport, he also gives us the clue that, so the Bhagavad Gita is obviously, it's meant for everybody, but it's especially meant for conditioned souls like us. So Krishna is describing the activities of the liberated souls. So if we try and follow in their footsteps, we can also be re-established in our relationships. So maybe we may not be able to be nityam in our bodhyantam. We may not be able to always engage in talking about Krishna, but we can sometimes engage in talking about Krishna. We can sometimes think about Krishna. They say that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So our journey back to the spiritual worlds begins with chanting one name of Krishna. Right? And that one name is the first step that we take. And then we take another step. Then we chant a mala. And then we chant 16 rounds. And then we read the Bhagavad Gita. We serve the devotees. We serve the deities. And by, we are every obeisances that we give takes us one step closer to Krishna. Every time we say Krishna's name, we burn off mountains of sin that have accumulated. That is holding us back. So the verse is not meant to discourage us, it's meant to encourage us. That the liberated jivas, they very happily engage in this. So maybe right now, it may seem as a bit of an ordeal to us. But we know that what is lying at the other end is something that is very sweet and palatable. So if we know that we are going to a place that is really nice, even if the journey is a little troublesome, it is worth the effort to make it. So Prabhupada is encouraging us through this verse. Okay, questions, comments?
Just when we say, like when we chant one time Krishna's name, mountains of karma will be burned. So the rate with which we accumulated our karma is so rapid, or we took huge effort to accumulate?
Rapid, or more than rapid, it's like for since the beginning of time, we have been conditioned. So many lifetimes we have led, so many activities we have done. So it's not that your karma began only when you took birth. Right? When you took birth, there's already a mountain of karma waiting. That's why you've taken birth, because there's a mountain of karma. And the nature of that mountain is that it has many other mountains in it. So the nature of chanting is, so that's why they say that chanting destroys more karma than we can create in a lifetime. Right? So not only does it relieve us of the karma that we may be creating in this lifetime, we also have so much of karma that we have from our millions and billions of lifetimes. Right? I don't know the equation that
But
one name is 20,000 karmas. I don't know that, but
the efficacy of chanting is more rapid compared to how we accumulate.
chanting is a lot more potent. That's why they say that the process of bhakti, the other process is that of prashchit. Right? You keep atoning for the karmas. So that is like taking one mountain, one rock away, throwing it away, taking another rock away and throwing it away. Right? So that is the process of prashchit. Or the process of piety. Through piety you try to exchange one kind of rock with another kind of rock, but you still have the same rocks that are holding you back. But bhakti is like psh, and one mountain disappeared, and then as you sincerely perform more bhakti, more mountains will disappear. Yeah? Anything else? Okay. So, we're past the time. So I won't do the next verse. I'll stop here and see if there's any more discussion. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints for going over time.
Pure devotees.
The definition of pure devotee. So this is the definition of pure. This verse, if you read the verse,
Okay.
right? So what do the pure devotees do? Their lives are fully devoted to my service. They derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So who is a pure devotee? So two things are brought forth by Krishna over here. One is they're associating with devotees. And that's where conversation happens. So pure devotees are not like, you know, like solitary beings or just hanging out on their own. They're serving Krishna in the association of other devotees. Factually speaking, they're serving Krishna by serving other devotees. So that is their service. You know, really speaking, there is a very small, relatively small group of jivas who actually serve Krishna directly. Those positions have been taken. But there are billions and billions of jivas who are, who are constantly serving. So they're serving das, anudas, anudas, anudas. They're serving somebody who serves somebody, serving somebody. But it's all service to Krishna. So they're pure. That's the definition of pure devotees. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it says, Anivilashita shunyam jnana karma adi anavratam anukulena krishnanu anushilanam bhaktirottama. That more than pure devotees, pure devotional service, then what is the nature of pure devotional service? Anukulena krishnanu anushilanam bhaktirottama. That it is rendered favorably to Krishna and uninterrupted to Krishna. But the main quality is that it is in relationship to Krishna and his devotees. So there is no tinge of material contamination.
In the paragraph itself, Prabhupada very clearly explained, devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours daily engaged in glorifying the qualities and pastime of Supreme Lord. Their hearts and souls are constantly submerged in Krishna and they take pleasure in discussing him with other devotees. Exactly what you said.
In
Prabhupada has clearly mentioned that.
Yeah.
Definition of pure devotee.
Yeah. So that's why understanding Jiva Tattva is very simple. That they serve Krishna and devotees. Bas. Not very complicated. Conditioned Jivas are complicated, but liberated Jiva is very simple definition. Just like Krishna's definition is very simple. I'm the source of everything, bas. Don't worry about anything. Right? Complication comes when we start looking at it from the materially conditioned perspective. I'm a king, I'm a queen, I'm a soldier, what's my duty? In this time of famine, what is the duty of a king? Can the king kill animals during famine? So then it becomes conditioned, it becomes very, very complicated. Okay, so we'll end over here. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.